Thanks for joining me on the papers on Canal the English broadcast from Douala, Cameroon. My name is Gladys Ambodibang. We begin this morning with the French daily Info Matin that captions on potential successors of head of state Paul Biya. The paper publishes what the French magazine Jeune Afrique published on Monday, and according to the article, the following ministers in Cameroon were placed amongst the expected or those expected to replace the head of state with the following profile. They include, amongst others, the Minister of State, Minister of Justice and Keeper of the Seals, Laurent Esso, the Minister of Territorial Administration and Decentralization, René Emmanuel Sadi, the Minister of Transport, Alain Edgame Bengo, Minister of Economy, Planning and Regional Development, Louis Paul Moutaze. Their profiles on the papers or in today's edition of Info Matin. You have that on pages 2 and 3 of the French daily. And then the paper again equally publishes the final list of candidates admitted into the National School of Administration and Magistracy, ENAM. The paper tells us how that as soon as the list was made public by the Ministry of Public Service and Administrative Reforms, the director of the institution immediately sent out a release convening the admitted candidates on December 18, 2017. They read the list or the final list of admitted candidates into ENAM. You have that on pages 3 to 9 of the French daily Info Matin. Then let's move over to Media Freak 24, Media Freak, which is a bilingual newspaper. It tells us how it focuses on the most influential Cameroonians and has on its front page published the images of those amongst the 100 most influential Cameroonians in the country. They include, amongst others, the head of state Paul Biya, his wife Chantal Biya, Secretary General, the Presidency of the Republic, Ferdinand Ngongo, the founder of AC and Ciel, Genevieve Choué, the Delegate General for National Security, Martin Bargangele, Elizabeth Medumbadan, General Manager of Orange Cameroon, and Dr. Frixton Antonet, Government Delegate to the Douala City Council, and Boni Dashako, the CEO of ACMA Media Group, amongst others. You want the list of the 100 candidates. You read today's edition of Media Freak 24. The paper says they were chosen for their dynamism and not for their fortunes, and equally their added value to the state, the economy, politics and socio-cultural activities of the country. Read the details or the profiles of other most influential Cameroonians on pages 5 to 10 of today's edition of Media Freak newspaper. And then in the same edition, you read about the University of Boya or the University of Bamenda that matriculates over 3,657 students into the 2017-2018 academic year. The paper tells us how the batch Christians, the batch of achievers, the over 3,657 students have officially taken their matriculation oath at the ceremony at the campus of the University of Bamenda that took place on the 2nd of December 2017. You have the details in this edition of Media Freak newspaper. And then again, the paper tells us how in the southwest region of Cameroon, Elite Association, the CSOs, denounces youth migration out of Cameroon. It says the Southwest Elite Association, SWELA, and other civil society organizations operating in the Southwest region have vehemently denounced unnecessary youth migration out of Cameroon. The Secretary General of SWELA, Mr. Joseph Moki Etukeni, was speaking recently at a one-day symposium dubbed Operation Stop Youth Migration in Cameroon and Africa, drawing inspiration from the recent and bizarre happenings in Libya, whereby a CNN TV report showed how African migrants were being sold as slaves as they grappled to cross the Atlantic Ocean to Europe. The Secretary General of Swela, Mukie Tukeni, questioned why youth across Cameroon and the African continent want to go out. If you want the details of that story, then you read today's edition of Media Freak Venkat newspaper. And then in this edition of the paper, you equally read about the Northwest region, precisely the Boyo division, where the Fundum starts afresh. It says the new paramount leader of Fundum, who is Fon Clement the second, has been officially presented to the people of his clan and the administration of the Boyo division and the region at large in an enlarged occasion that took place on December 2. The new Fon emerged at the palace courtyard known as the Iwenjang in the presence of the governor of the Northwest region. You have the details on that on page 10 or page 11 of Media Freak newspaper. Then again, the paper tells us how in Boya, in the southwest region of Cameroon, maternal mortality rate in the region is unacceptably high, and that is what the health delegate for public health tells us. The health delegate for the southwest region says maternal mortality rate in that area is unacceptably high. And according to Media Freak Venkat newspaper, the last coordination meeting of the southwest regional delegation of public health for 2017 has taken place in Boya with a lament on the high rates of maternal mortality in the region. The meeting, which held on December 7 and 8, brought together district medical officers in all 18 health districts of the southwest regions, directors of regional hospitals, some service heads, as well as the health workers in the southwest region of Cameroon. If you want the details on that story, you read today's edition of Media Freak Venkat newspaper. Then let's move over to the National Bilingual Daily Cameroon Tribune, which captions on the fight against climate change in the world and says President Paul Biya is amongst 50 other head of states currently attending the One Planet Summit in Paris, France. They are together, or they are discussing how to raise finances to fight against climate change in the world. You have the details on that in today's edition of the National Bilingual Daily Cameroon Tribune. Same paper tells us about tensions in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon, which are the two English-speaking regions of the country. It says, while fears of the unknown continually haunt the population of the two regions, many are gradually coming to terms that peace has no price and are thus praying for normalcy to return so that they can live and let others live. Pages 8 to 10 of today's edition of the National Bilingual Daily Cameroon Tribune has details on social tensions in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. And then still in today's edition of Cameroon Tribune, you read about Noni, which is found in the Bui division in northwest Cameroon. It tells us how new roads broaden smiles of the populations living, or the population living in that part of the country. It says ongoing works on the Tolong Noni roads will, upon completion, greatly reinforce the safari capacity of the subdivision that is reputed for evergreen plains punctuated by endless slopes, rolling hills, friendly season, and delightful temperatures. Pages 38 to 40 of today's edition of the National Bilingual Daily Cameroon Tribune has the details on that story on the new roads in Noni subdivision. Then let's move over to the Guardian Prose newspaper, which is very much interested in the Anglophone crisis. The paper tells us that our question is Biya waiting for a midwife to deliver lasting solutions to the crisis currently rocking the two English-speaking regions of Cameroon. If you want the answers to that, you read page 3 of the Guardian Post newspaper, which equally informs us how gendarmes fatally wounded in Manfe attacks dies in hospital. The attacks took place a few days ago in the Manyo division in southwest Cameroon. And then again, the paper tells us how a divisional officer escapes lynching for insulting Ambazonia in Lido. That is in quote. It is the deal for Mbonge subdivision in the Dian division, still in southwest Cameroon. And then the paper tells us in its editorial or question whether the Paris Climate Change Summit, how beneficial is it to Cameroon? If you want to know how beneficial it is, or the questions that are being raised by the Guardian Post newspaper, you read today's edition, and you have that on page 4. Then we have this human interest story where the paper tells us how a Betty woman dumps her husband to marry her church pastor. If you want the details on that story, then you read today's edition of the Guardian Post newspaper. That article brings us to the end of today's edition of the papers on Canal de English. Thanks for watching.